everybody.
Hello.
It's nice to be here. I'm coming from Boston. Came in yesterday. I thank you for having me back. Fenton introduced me to Okemah, Oklahoma for the Woody Guthrie Festival a number of years ago. And so it's really nice to be back to the home of Woody and Mickey, two of my heroes, and lots of other folks here. So thanks for having me. Am I a Yankees fan? I'm actually a Boston Red Sox fan. I like Mickey because I grew up with Mickey. I grew up in New Jersey. And Mickey Mantle was my little, boy time hero. And just last year I gave up my dream of playing baseball in the major leagues. Really, I think that's a dream I'll never give up. But yeah, Mickey's on my wall. He's watching me work every day. So yes, that's where I'm coming from. I like the players. When I moved to Boston, I fell in love with the players up there and so forth. So, anyway, so I'm here to talk about product stewardship. It's probably perhaps a new term for some of you here. So way back 40 years ago, when Robert, Fenton, and I were starting up in the recycling business or so, it kind of looked like this truck. We were focused on the newspaper. Robert was telling us about how the markets are changing, the mills are changing, but sustainability was all about recycling, and recycling was really all about newspaper. I was collecting it on my porch in Philadelphia at the time. But now, things look a whole lot different. Okay? There's a lot of new terms that have come up over the past 30 years or so, like zero waste, the cradle to cradle, producer responsibility, and all of that is wrapped up into this new term now that you might be hearing called the circular economy. It's one of these terms coming in from Europe. And what this really means is it's kind of the same thing that we're all doing already, but it's an emphasis on the economy. So instead of making products and then recycling some and disposing most of it going this way, trying to bring it into that circular loop and creating value all along the supply chain. So I'm going to talk to you about this big circle here called product stewardship. So product stewardship is a term that we use for policies and programs that reduce the health and environmental impact from consumer products all across the life cycle for those products. So up in the front end, on the mining, the manufacture, the use, all the way down to the end-of-life management of those products after we're done with them as consumers. Product stewardship is a term that could mean voluntary programs. It could also mean regulatory programs. It could be done by manufacturers by themselves. It could also be done by government by themselves from policies. Now this term here, you can see the little circle on the far right bottom is EPR, Extended Producer Responsibility. And that's a new term perhaps for some, but that means that the responsibility for a manufacturer is extended from the traditional in the plant, the air emissions, the water emissions, the worker safety, all the way to the end-of-life management for that product. So the EPR, Extended Producer Responsibility systems, focus on the back end. It's kind of the take-back systems that you hear about. So take-backs, end-of-life, and regulatory is what this term is. And even though it focuses on the back end, it's really trying to influence the products that are made in the front end. Because the concept goes that if the producer, the manufacturer, is responsible for what they come up with, what the waste is, if you will, the materials in the back end, they're going to figure out how to have more value in the back end, how to reduce their costs or increase the value. So that then means, what do I make my product with? What toxics do I use? Can I make it reusable, recyclable, and so forth? Now the carpet's a good idea, a good example, because what's happened recently, past 3-5 years, is that carpet manufacturers switched, for the most part, from the nylon fibers, which cost more up front, but had a higher value in the back end for recyclers, to polyester, which was lower cost for them. They make more profit from making the carpet, but the carpet recyclers, it cost them more in the back end. And many of them went out of business because of this. Because of this disconnect here from the manufacturer and the material in the back end. All right, so our organization, the Product Stewardship Institute, I founded it 15 years ago. And we are located in Boston, but we work nationally. We work with 47 states, including the Oklahoma DEQ, which was a member for many years. We also have hundreds of local governments that are members of our organization, and that's our governance. So it's governance is state and local government. But we have 110 partners, mostly from the businesses, including manufacturers, retailers, and other recyclers, other businesses, universities, non-US governments, particularly those in Canada, and even environmental groups. And I'm also on the board of the Global Product Stewardship Council, Sydney, Australia, so we work globally on these issues. So this is, this topic of product stewardship, not just US, frankly, it's a concept that we imported from other places. So here's some of our partners and advisory council members. You can see Covanta has been a long time good partner of our organization. I see Matt's here, and gave me a great tour here of Tulsa yesterday. I'm ready to move here next week. And so we have others like Waste Management, Energizer, the paint industry, Staples, the Natural Resources Defense Council, and others. So one of the things I wanted to mention, if you're not aware, based upon a grant from the Oklahoma DEQ, we've been able to open up what we call membership, really all of our services to any local government and tribal government here in Oklahoma. So, fact sheets and information about product stewardship, about how to get into the circular economy, if you will. And so if you're not a member, check here with Susie Whalen, and she can clue you in, and you'll have this presentation, so you'll have the information. So this is, if you like what you're hearing, if you want to know more about product stewardship, you can plug in to what we're doing. So in general, what we're doing is reducing the health and environmental impact from consumer products all across that life cycle. And it's a lot of products, right? We're working on about 20 different product categories. So things like batteries, electronics, thermostats, auto switches, mattresses, carpet, phone books, paint, pharmaceuticals, medical sharps, packaging, fluorescent lighting, and lots of other products as well. So you're working with many of these things. The packaging is about 30–40% of the waste stream, if you include paper in there, but there's a lot of other products out there that are difficult to manage or toxic. And what we do a lot of research figuring out what's the problem, how big of a problem is it, and then we try to bring all the stakeholders together. But we have a philosophy, if you will, an approach that you want to involve all the stakeholders, because everybody's got a piece of the puzzle. You can't have government figure it out themselves, you can't have the private sector, you got to bring together with the environmental community and everyone together work through those solutions. So that's what we do. We engage the stakeholder groups. We try to get consensus as much as we can. It's not always possible. And sometimes we work on legislation. We develop model legislation on these products as well, which is the best thing to harmonize that, reduces costs for the businesses, levels the playing field, and the governments don't have to reinvent the wheel all the time across the country. So the benefits of these programs is, from the top left, it's convenient. We're collecting, again, this is take back, end of life. We're trying to recover these materials. These systems result in more collection opportunities. Whether it's public, whether it's private sector, whether it's at retail, whether it's at municipal, you're making it more convenient for the consumer. Making it more convenient means that you're going to be collecting more material. It saves money, taxpayer money, because right now, for the most part, it's government-funded, taxpayer-funded government programs that are running the systems. This is a movement to privatize. It's privatize and have government regulation light, if you will. That government regulations are at a minimum level, so that it's creating that level playing field and the markets can operate as they should. Now, what it also does is it creates supply of materials. So I'll talk more about it, but let's say paint, you have a paint system in place, you have responsibilities, accountability. We see these products increase. Electronics, there's more of these materials that are collected, you have more of a supply. It could create, it certainly diverts the materials from the landfill, and it can create the jobs, because recycling creates 10 times as many jobs on average as disposal. And then this DFE, design for the environment here, it's ultimately what we want, right? We don't want to have the same problems in 10, 20 years as we have today. We want to have different products, smarter products, and so we're trying to have the system, the financial incentive such that the products are made differently. Now I'd say these systems somewhat successful in this area, sometimes yes, sometimes no, and we're working more on that area because we need to make better products. So the options, if you look at it in two basic ways, on one hand it's voluntary systems, on the other hand it's regulated systems. Okay, I'm going to start with some of the regulated systems. Now these EPR programs, there's 90 of them in the country, and as you can see from whichever monitor you're looking at, it's a big upward tick from 2002. So up to 90 EPR laws in the United States. 33 states have passed at least one of these laws. Oklahoma, here you see in yellow, has one. It's the electronics, which I'll talk about. Not surprisingly, it's the coast, West Coast, Northeast, and Great Lakes area that have the most activity on these programs. California, Vermont, and Maine leading the charge. Now, in terms of the different product categories, there are the far left of 6 of these laws on pharmaceuticals. They're all local laws right now. And what this means is that the pharmaceutical industry is required to fund and manage the take-back of old medications, get them out of the medicine cabinets for them to manage those. For the next one over, 3 laws on mattress recycling. Requires the mattress industry to set up systems and fund it for the recycling of mattresses. 4 laws on fluorescent lamps that contain mercury, 9 on paint, 11 on batteries, 13 on mercury auto switches, 13 on thermostats, mercury thermostat, 15 on auto switches, and 24 on electronics. So, the point is here, it's not enough just to have a program, right? Anybody can set up a program, whether it's voluntary or whether it's mandatory. It needs to be convenient for the consumers so that they participate, and then once it's convenient, the infrastructure is in place. They need to be aware of what's the problem with the material, why they should do this, and where they should bring it. And then in many occasions, incentives are always a good idea. And we all use coupons in stores. So whether it's $5 bounty for bringing in a mercury thermostat or a discount on bringing in electronics, it helps to bring the consumer to the take-back. So I'm going to talk a little bit here about the product stewardship programs that we've been working on in Oklahoma and some opportunities. So let's start with some of the voluntary ones. There's 3 national voluntary programs, one on thermostats with the Thermostat Recycling Corporation. Second is Coal to Recycle's Rechargeable Battery Program. And the third one is the Tires Forward program operated by Bridgestone, which they pay for some of the tires that end up dumped in waterways, basically. Anyone who's familiar with one or more of these programs, can you just raise your hand? Good. So on the thermostats end here, so we've done some assessments and then helping to put the infrastructure together. So here's where I'm going to do a call out to Matt Newman from Cobana, because he is really charged about this and the guy to talk to about helping to set up the thermostat programs. With Matt's help and with the DEQ's help, their support, with the Thermostat Recycling Corporation support, we've been able to put in 39 new locations at Lot Supply, which I learned last night is a retailer as well as an HVAC contractor. So we're getting these mercury thermostats out of the waste stream, out of landfills, out of the waste to energy facilities, and recycled. So it's a really good thing. We need to set up infrastructure first, and next we need to move to that outreach component and to let people know about it and then give incentive. Now, I did ask my staff for a whole bunch, for some ideas here about what was being done. They gave me a whole list of like a dozen things, probably from Matt and maybe talking to Becky Jane from the Illinois EPA, who's running a program there. But we're pulling all these ideas together, things like visiting the contractors themselves, sending postcards, partnering with the trade associations for the contractors and the wholesalers, and the list goes on. But it's not enough just to have a program. It needs to be worked so that it actually takes place. Now, another thing is the incentives, because Illinois is testing right now a $5 coupon. We've tested that in the past. It works. If you you give people $5 back when they bring in a mercury thermostat, you're going to get more. It's not rocket science, right? It costs more to do, but we want to get the mercury out of the waste stream. So, the things that you can do, and this is where I'd like to just throw out some ideas and keep doing that throughout the presentation and engage with you later, but we need more sites, we need more people to know about it, and some incentive ideas. And here's soon, if I recall, from our organization contact to work on for mercury thermostats. So, batteries. Well, we've worked through a U.S. Department of Agriculture grant with the Solid Waste Institute of Northeast Oklahoma. We've added, with their help, 10 call-to-recycle rechargeable battery collections. That was a 53% increase in sites in Northeast Oklahoma. So that's good. And we need more of those sites out there. And again, more of the education, because this is the battery industry stepping up voluntarily and saying, once they're collected, we're going to pay for that. It's going to be a free program. So you should take advantage of those programs, like the thermostat one. Free program by the manufacturer. That one, these are no-brainer programs, really. But it does take effort, right, to put these in place. Again, SUNA is the contact for the batteries. And on the tires, as I mentioned before, we've been doing some work educating here. We did a fact sheet on this program to let people know about the Tires Forward program, that if there's tires that you know of that are in, say, waterways, then you can call Bridgestone, apply to get funding. So once those are pulled out, they'll actually dispose of those or recycle them, if possible, all those tires. So let's move on to paint. Now this is one which we've been working on here to lay the groundwork for a mandatory program. Now the beauty of this program is that it's supported by the manufacturers. We've been working with the industry for a dozen years. When we first went to them, they basically said, go away. We don't want to hear about the $500 million cost that this is on local governments around the country, or that 10% of all paint that people purchase sits in their garage or their shed or just goes unused. It's $8 a liquid gallon. Then they said, well, this is the consumer's problem. They bought the paint, they should have used it up, and it's their problem. Well, as we know, it's local government's problem to manage, to pay for it, and little by little, they started to understand that with us. So, here in Oklahoma, there's 1.5 million gallons of leftover paint each year. That's 10% of all the paint that's purchased. And if all that paint were managed properly, meaning collected, recycled as much as possible, made into other recycled paint products, or disposed of if it's unusable, that would be $11.6 million for the cost. Now, of course, a lot of that doesn't happen, and there's external costs on the environment, but this is the benefit of having a program here. And what we did, we went to the industry, we went armed with our research reports, and they actually engaged with us because they wanted to replicate that in different states. So we had 4 meetings over 9 months, and we came to a first agreement that had US EPA signing on at the administrative level, the entire paint industry, which is 95% here of the American Coatings Association, the state and local governments, recyclers, and others. And we agreed to work on 8 projects together, technical projects. We raised $2 million, public and private. Through those answers, the industry said, okay, we'll do it. They signed a second MOU with similar signatories on that. We then developed a work plan, legislative model that required the industry to reduce, reuse, and recycle. And now there's 9 of these laws in place, one in Colorado, that's fairly nearby, and 8 states in the District of Columbia. 1,400 collection sites have been set up, additional, mostly from the private sector, mostly small retailers that want people in their store because they know that if they can provide this service, that people will buy stuff, will be a good friendly partner. It's good for business. There's 8 million gallons collected, and the savings for government funding is $31 million. This is just 3 states in the first couple of years. There's going to be hundreds of millions of dollars saved, or really $500 million eventually, hopefully. And the interesting thing that I learned by doing this presentation is that from these programs, the paint is collected. Now, the good paint goes to various paint recyclers around the country. There's recycled paint manufacturers. You can take the paint and recycle it back into new paint. And over 70% of the paint that's collected goes into new paint. Now, there's some kinds of paint that isn't 100%, you know, to make into new paint. Some of that comes to Pryor, Oklahoma, where Amazon turns that into a cement additive. So it's these programs, these regulatory programs around the country are creating jobs in Pryor. And having this program here will create more jobs. For the paint industry, we leverage funding from them. They developed, they had us do a paint fact sheet, other resources. So we're laying the groundwork here. I know regulations and so forth is, you know, here, you want to tread lightly, but this here has the full support of the paint industry. And Sydney Hausman-Cohen is our person to contact for paint. All right, so let's move to electronics. This is your one EPR program here. Now, there are about 25 of these laws around the country. As you see, there's different types. Some of them have strong central systems, other ones have performance goals, some of them just have TVs only, and some, like Oklahoma, have the financing less specified. So lots of different programs, but the bad news is that Oklahoma's program isn't performing that well. It's the red little bar chart here, and other ones are performing at a better clip. So we're looking at what is it that the good states are doing. So we run stakeholder calls with different, public and private. We bring together, we're trying to figure this out. We're doing our research. Again, many of you can participate in that. And what our team found is, a couple of things would be helpful. One is to set performance goals. Of course, if you need commitments to get the higher rates of recycling, making it more convenient. The program is less convenient right now. And then to include televisions like Texas recently did here is to just add that. It's a huge component of the waste stream. You'll increase the amount. So I don't know how, I know that there are recyclers here and others that are involved in electronics. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. And this is where Wayne Traber is working on those stakeholder calls for us on electronics. All right, winding down to pharmaceuticals. This is an issue which 10 years ago, I had no idea that this would be one of the product stewardship issues that we were working on. And the question is, what is it about the disposal of pharmaceuticals that makes it so important? Well, when I first got involved, it was the U.S. Geological Survey looking at the data that pharmaceuticals were showing up in the waterways. And then there was other data showing the aquatic impacts from the pharmaceuticals as well. But the real driver here, unfortunately, is drug abuse. That the leftover medications are taken by teenagers, as young as 11 or 12. There's a lot of data on this. That it's contributing to drug abuse. And the driver behind setting up take-back programs is to get those medicines out of the cabinets and safely disposed of here. Now, one of the things I want to mention, and I'm going to have to read here because I like doing these presentations, so I learn an awful lot about the location where I'm at. But in 2012, the Oklahoma State Board of Pharmacy changed its rules to allow nursing homes and long-term care facilities to give unused drugs to pharmacists for redistribution among communities in need. So they're working at the source reduction level, and this is a very important component. Right here in Tulsa, 22 retired physicians regularly visit 68 long-term care facilities, collect the unused medications, transport them safely to the county services pharmacy, and those medications are dispensed free of charge to low-income citizens of Tulsa County. Another great program that is here. And that was featured on National Public Radio's Morning Edition in May of this year. Now, the other thing that I'd like to mention, again, bringing it back to Matt and Covanta, that Covanta destroys leftover pharmaceuticals collected by law enforcement for free. So the Oklahoma Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs took the initiative to establish collection points at law enforcement in every district in Oklahoma. And you can find a collection spot on the Oklahoma Bureau of Narcotics take-back location finder. So these are all very interesting developments here and a really solid program. These take-back programs are a key component of drug abuse prevention. Now, we've been working on this for, as I said, about 10 years. And we, again, did the data stakeholder meetings. We brought the pharmaceutical industry together, see what can be done. And we, as a group, multi-stakeholder, public, private, one of the main things was to make it more convenient for consumers to drop off their medications. Because before the law was changed and the Drug Enforcement Administration rules were changed, you had to have a law enforcement personnel at any location where controlled substances, like pain medications, which are only 5 to 10% of the medications, but they're the ones that contribute to drug use. So we wanted to get those out. You needed to make it more convenient. We lobbied, changed the law, changed in Congress, changed the Federal Controlled Substances Act and the Drug Enforcement Administration rules as well. Those have been changed. It's now more convenient to collect. The remaining aspect is this sustainable finance. How do you finance the disposal? Because we want the pharmacies to collect. They'll do it for the most part. Many of them want people in their stores. They need to have once they're collected, the medications paid for. As Covanta is one of the major solutions, but there's 6 stars here, and those represent 6 local governments that have stepped up and had the pharmaceutical industry pay. Those passed as law. Alameda County is the first star in 2012, King County, Washington, the next one, and then 4 others in California. Putting that onus on the pharmaceutical industry. They sued Alameda County. It went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, which is that big gavel going up and down. So just recently, the past couple of months, the U.S. Supreme Court declined to hear the petition from the pharmaceutical industry, which let this law stand. And now many state and local governments around the country, including Congress, we're working with U.S. Congresswoman Louise Slaughter in New York to put together a federal bill on take-backs as well. So we're very active on this issue. Now, what you could do here is look to your neighbor in Nebraska. They're doing voluntary programs. They have a Meds Coalition, Nebraska Meds Coalition. We just highlighted them on our webinar last week. They're doing such a great job with the network. They have funding from the state that's paying for the collections at the pharmacies. They're one of the first in the country to have the pharmacies collect these controlled substances under this new regulation from the Drug Enforcement Administration, DEA. So you can listen to that webinar, but they put together a great network and to get their pharmacies to collect. And so we have Vivian here working on pharmaceuticals that can work with you in setting something up. So I think this might be the last product I'm going to talk about. It's mattresses. These are bulky. They're not great for waste energy plants. They get caught in the contraptions there, the landfills. They got the springs. And besides that, 90% of the mattress can be recycled. So you're kind of tossing out the material. Now there's getting a little dry here. There's 222,000 mattresses discarded every year in Oklahoma. Less than 5% are recycled nationally of these mattresses. So there's a long way to go here. So we've been working with the Mattress Recycling Council, and 3 states have passed legislation that require the mattress manufacturers to set up mattress recycling programs. They didn't really want to do it originally, but then they engaged over time, and there are 3 laws: Rhode Island, Connecticut, and California. And there may be an opportunity here to attract the mattress industry to Oklahoma. It creates jobs. Once in Connecticut, when they started down the path of regulation, they attracted 2 mattress recycling facilities because they knew there would be more supply. Mattresses wouldn't be disposed of, they would be recycled. Savior. And Sydney is working with us on mattresses. Thank you. So, down to the home stretch here. So what's the ultimate goal? What are we trying to do? Well, as I started at the beginning, this is all materials, right? This is all resources that we've been wasting. And it goes back to, for many cases, back to mining. If we're not recycling into that circular economy, we have to go back and keep mining the materials or manufacturing the materials. There's a lot of energy involved in that. So, we need to change that. The other thing is that EPA did a study that shows that 29% of the greenhouse gas emissions comes from the life cycle impacts from products. Again, from the manufacture, the transportation, the use, the energy that's all involved in that. So, not recycling is creating the climate change. And it's the millions, if not billions of dollars spent by government. I'm sure that, I know that government would rather hire employees for police, teachers, fire, and so forth than use it for trash. So what we're trying to do is get to this circular economy. And I have 3 questions I just wanted to leave you with, because it's not an easy question. There's always trade-offs, right? I'm not here to say EPR or product stewardship is a silver bullet. It's all about figuring it out. And it's different in each state, different in each locality, what we do. So one of the questions that I leave you with is, what level of responsibility do companies have for the products that they sell? Perhaps a simple question, but this is one that we grapple with every single product. It's a negotiation on the level and degree of responsibility that the manufacturers should have for the products that they make. Second question here is, how do we create systems that balance regulation with the need to create a corporate consciousness that protects while it profits? Now, companies are only sustainable if they're profitable, if it's a for-profit. Only sustainable if it's profitable. How do we instill a consciousness, at the same time create systems that balance regulation? That many companies come to us, they want a level playing field, right? The level playing field allows companies to operate in the game. And what we see is companies don't want to step out often and take back their product. And I'll give you a dozen examples of this. They don't want to take back their product, whether it's water filters or carpet or whatever it is, unless it's an industry-wide system. The only way you're going to get an industry-wide system without collusion, which is against the law, is legislation. Well, we need some kind of legislative system that doesn't strangle the innovation, that still allows for this consciousness, because it can't just be regulatory. There needs to be some other component that I call a corporate consciousness that goes beyond being forced or required to do it, where it's coming from within, whether it's the mission for the company, whether it's an individual in that company, whether it's one company within an industry. It has to come from the place of a consciousness about why we need to do this and why we need to bring materials back into that circular economy. And last, how do we create a new playing field so that the product manufacturers design for sustainability during product conception? I'll go back to the carpet example because it's very stark, where a manufacturer, they're reducing their costs by changing what they're manufacturing with. Going from nylon to polyester makes a lot of money up here, but it causes more costs down here. There's a lot of other products in the future. We have no idea what they're going to be. We do know that there'll be batteries, for whether it's electric vehicles or solar panels or whatever it might be that are being made right now. It would be great if there was a system in place, the policy, the guidance up front, so that the companies are able to figure out the end of life within what they're designing. Because right now, frankly, we're playing catch up. We're trying to figure out what to do with the paint, the batteries, even packaging, everything in the back end. It's really hard. So we need to start thinking up front and designing the system. These are questions I don't have answers to, but I hope that you can join me in trying to think through this and innovate. So we do work with product stewardship organizations, institutes, councils all across the country. We could start one here where we have groups together and on a monthly basis. We facilitate the calls, or at least we get together to discuss some of these issues, figure out a priority product or two to work on, and move ahead. So that's an offer. We can work with you on something like that. So really, big question mark as to what you'd like to do and how you'd like to engage. And with that, I will conclude and open